Hello, YouTube. Hello, Brian Ocken and Brian Skin.
Hey.
Hello.
Hello. Great to have you both here. Everyone watching on the live stream, I can see you there. Thank you for showing up. Feel free to put in comments like always. Let's kick this off. Hello and welcome to Python Bytes, where we deliver Python news and headlines directly to your earbuds. This is episode 279, recorded on lucky April 13th, 2022. I'm Michael Kennedy.
And I'm Brian Ocken.
And I'm Brian Skin.
Hello, Brians. Great to have you.
Hello, singular Michael.
Great Brians think alike.
That's right. That's the saying. Brian Skin, welcome. It's great to have you here. You are now completing the trifecta of podcasts, I understand.
Yes, indeed. I was on a panel for Talk Python and an episode of Test and Code a little while back, and excited to be here for Python Bytes.
Yeah.
Nice.
You've been a big contributor in terms of sending topics our way, so it's only fitting that you're here. Tell people real quick about yourself before we jump into the topics.
Sure. I'm a chemical engineer by training. I am not actually a software dev by day. I have a PhD in chemical engineering. I've been working for the last 10 years or so at a company here in Dayton, Ohio, Faraday Technology, working on electrochemical process R&D. So there's a lot of science there, some programming, mostly for data analysis, things like that. But I also have I've done quite a bit of Python on the side in documentation area and various things like that. So.
Cool. Chemical engineering is pretty awesome, and it's great to have someone here who's not a straight software developer. You know, we get a lot of sort of myopic views, and I think you'll have some interesting perspectives.
Hope so.
Yeah, I hope so as well, I'm sure. Now, before we kick this off, I want to say this episode is brought to you by Datadog. Check them out at pythonbytes.fm/Datadog. We'll talk more about them later. Right now, Brian, maybe we could talk about f-strings. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I love f-strings. Use them all the time, but I was like really thought it was cool. There were a couple new resources that I kind of wish I had earlier. This one, they're new. So we've got from Florian Bruin, and he's was hugely helpful to doing the code review or book review and code review and all that stuff on the PyTest book. So I definitely want to shout out to him for thank him for doing that. But so he generated this Python f-strings. It's called fstrings.help. And it's just like, it's a Jupyter notebook looking thing. I think he created it with Jupyter notebook, but it just quickly goes through all of the formatting stuff of f-strings. And there's a little bit of explanation, but it just sort of exactly shows you, what the syntax is and what the output is, really concisely. This is a nice run through of the f-string features.
Yeah, that's cool. It looks like if you were trying to either learn Python strings or trying to help someone learn Python strings, you could just send them this and go, here, scan this. You'll be good to go.
What I like about it is just the terseness as well. So this is a decent reference to bookmark for looking things up. The other thing I wanted to point out was an article called Python f-strings are more powerful than you might think. And that's exactly kind of the gist of it. It's more discussion. It doesn't, it does sort of tell you what they are, but it kind of assumes you already know. But it says some really cool things like date and time formatting, have using it for debugging with variable names. We've talked about that on the show. Taking advantage of string representations. There's even embedded. I didn't know you could put f-strings inside of f-strings. So there's part nested f-strings, they call it. So interesting
Turtles all the way down.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
nested f-strings. I had no idea.
I didn't either.
I've totally done that before.
Really?
Yeah, templating one thing to then template into another thing. Absolutely. It's super helpful.
Okay.
Very cool.
Nice. So
yeah, it's easy to forget that you can apply the standard, I guess, string.format type of operators like :.3f or :comma to put digit grouping, but in f-strings, right? Because it feels more like you're working with a variable than you are with a format character.
Yeah. I mean, short examples like this of here's a cool thing you can do with even a well-established basic feature like that can really help people go, oh, hey, that's just what I need, and run with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very nice. Oh, this is great, Brian. I love it. Now, are we ready to move on?
Yeah, definitely.
All right. I kind of want to blow your mind with this thing here. You've probably heard about Bloomberg terminals. So if you're in the investment space, like if you work at a hedge fund or an investment company, especially in Manhattan, you'll sit down and you'll see like these 6 monitor crazy setups that would make gamers jealous, around them. Look at what is going on here. And one of the tools they use a lot is this thing called the Bloomberg Terminal that lets them look at all kinds of different visualizations and real-time instant updating things around the stock market and whatnot. That is a commercial project that, as best I can tell, I mean, there's probably discounts or whatever, but it costs around $2,000 per user per month, which is a non-trivial amount of
That's a ton.
cost, right? I mean, no wonder we're all getting like little percentages of money sucked out of our 401k retirements, because all of those people are like paying that much money to like manage our
Platform
accounts.
tools.
Yes, exactly. So I want to introduce you all to OpenBB at openbb.co. This is the equivalent thing, but several interesting aspects. 1, it's open source. 2, it's free.
That's cheaper.
Cheaper. It's not necessarily the most important thing, but it also gives you access to all sorts of tools that we know and love from Python, especially on the data science side. So this OpenBB thing is this terminal type thing you can install. It's really got this sort of weird blend of like CLI. I know Will McGugan would be super impressed with all of its like terminal UI, its TUI aspects, but then it also pops open interactive windows that are like graphs and all those kinds of things. We'll pull up some examples in a minute. So you get access. It's not just that it's free, but you get access to all the Python data science stack, and it is itself created in Python. So pretty cool. It's pretty popular. It's got 11,000 GitHub stars. And what you do is you show up at this terminal, and there's even an interactive live version. You can have dark mode or not dark mode turned on the website. I mean, I love it. This is really a polished thing. And you can type things like stocks. If you could spell stocks, you could type stocks, and it'll come up with all these ways that you could explore them. As you could type BA, and it'll come and give you these things. And eventually, if you get to the right spot, it doesn't happen on the website, but it'll pop up these extra windows that then like let you explore things with graphs and so on. So very, very cool. Let's pull up some of the terminal things here and look at the features. Where are the features? So you can install it through its own installer. You can install it through Anaconda, or you can run a Docker image of it to get it to run. So its sort of summary is Python-based integrated environment for investing research that leverages state-of-the-art data science tools and machine learning technologies, and navigate through over 500 different views and functionality. So here's some of the pictures that we can look at. If you go to the product terminal and just scroll down, you can have these really cool graphs of like significant events happening along here and extra information. You can look at basically an Excel view. You can look at 3D volatility sections. You can look at sentiment analysis here. The Bitcoin rainbow chart, which I don't know how to read rainbow charts, but isn't this an amazing view for something that runs in the terminal?
Yeah, this is great.
That's astonishing.
Yeah, it really is pretty astonishing. And like the things just keep coming. So if you just keep scrolling through this, there's stuff to way to like to understand how is the economy doing, apply AI predictions to like GDP and all sorts of wild stuff. So it's this really crazy blend of terminal TUI plus pop open a bunch of data science explorations, and then being Python, I'm sure you can explore it yourself. I looked at the requirements file. It's like maxed on requirements in there, let me tell you. But I think it's based on Tornado, as far as I can tell. So,
But,
and
yeah,
go ahead.
Will points out it also uses rich.
Yeah, well, it uses rich. Very
There
cool.
you go.
Thanks.
And
So-
tested with PyTest.
Oh
So,
my goodness. Yeah. So
nice.
that's awesome. Anyway, I am super impressed with this. It's an open source project based on Python, sort of democratizing a lot of these things. And if that wasn't enough, I think here's one more sort of side story that I think is interesting. So I'm sure you two have seen, you go, it's not as common as it used to be, but you go to some open source project or some application, it says, buy us a coffee, help make that next feature happen. This one has a different banner at the top. Instead of coffee, it says, we've just landed our $8.5 million seed funding round and we're about ready to get started. I mean, that's some
Nice.
kind of crushing it for open source, isn't it?
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, that's a lot of coffee.
They're going to be so jittery.
Just like the stock prices.
Exactly. Look, how much fluctuation. Oh, no, that's just me. It's actually very still.
Maybe
No.
that's why stocks go up and down so rapidly.
Too many traders and too much coffee.
Yeah.
That's probably actually true. Anyway, I think this is a really cool Python application. It looks well done. And it looks pretty modern. And yeah, it just looks like a neat way to apply some data science to investing.
Do you have a sense of the learning curve? Like, is it mainly pointed at, directed at investment professionals, or is there an on-ramp for casual use?
If you look at their description, it does seem to be focused on casual, sort of a casual use case here. Let me see. It says a terminal built by the community, shaped by our taste. Where did I see this? Somewhere. I can't remember where I ran across it, but they do talk about sort of like individual investors getting access to the tools that the companies at the people at the big banks and hedge funds would have. So it does sort of seem to be aimed at that. And my experience is it's pretty easy to use. I don't know. It's easy to understand the output, right? That's it's sort of more of a investing economics problem though.
That's a perpetual problem. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, indeed. All right. Well, people can check this out if it sounds interesting to them. Brian Skin, what you got for us?
So my first item is pyproject.toml and PEP621 for project metadata in pyproject.toml coming to setuptools. So, people in Python land are going to be pretty well familiar with pyproject.toml at this point. Originally was the PEP517 and PEP518, that created it and, started the basics there. And then you had Black doing project configuration in there. And it's kind of been slowly snowballing over the past few years. And one of the big pushes of PEP621, who's who of Python packaging authors here, was trying to standardize project metadata and also standardize it in a way that the metadata could be specified statically. Because that, for things to get uploaded to PyPI, if you want to have information about dependencies or, various other things like that, if you have the metadata specified statically, it's much easier to get to. You can trust it more. And so the PEP, it's defining how to put project metadata in pyproject.toml, how to tell the build tools like build or flit what is a static defined declaratively in the metadata and what's dynamic that is going to be provided dynamically later on. And a number of tools had implemented pyproject.toml support, things like flit, hatch, PDM. Not Poetry yet, though they're discussing it, but setuptools was still missing it. It's been an issue on the setuptools GitHub tracker for a while, and with a lot of discussion there about what it would take to bring it in. One of the big appeals of moving to this for setuptools specifically, there'd been the move from to try to bring static metadata in the setup.cfg, but there's some in that discussion, there's some problems with the INI format because it's not structured. It doesn't have good like complex data type support.
Right, nesting and embedded things don't work so well.
Yeah,
right?
there's no INI has no sense of an array. So if you had a setup.cfg with an array in it, setuptools actually had to take that as a string representation of an array and then arrayify it by executing it, basically, instead of the TOML where it actually knows it as an array in a table. But in any event, Anderson Bravel-Harry has just within the last month or so, I think it was, finished an experimental implementation of PEP621 in setuptools. There was a discuss thread seeking feedback from the community, try it out, report bugs. I tried it on one of my projects and it mostly worked. Actually turned up a bug that Anderson fixed super quickly, where I do dynamic long description, which turns into the README for the PyPI page.
Do you mean you read it out of like a text file or something? Or?
Well, so what I have is I've got documentation links in my README that point into like the main branch. But when I do a build to PyPI to do a release, I want it to point to an archival version of the docs on read the docs. And so I dynamically do a replace on the docs branch for those links.
Well, aren't you a special butterfly?
I have complicated needs. I'm sorry. But so I have that set up and it broke and I reported it and he fixed it. So as far as I can tell, it may be experimental and it probably will change, especially some of the issues around specifying dynamic metadata. But it's at least working reasonably. So check it out. If you're using setuptools, take a look at switching over to that. He made a tool that can convert setup.cfg to pyproject.toml. The project is ini2toml. And there's some others. You can check the show notes. I've got a number of things listed there.
Yeah, very cool. I suspect that ini2toml might be more generally useful, actually.
I think that's why he titled it that way. Instead of setup.cfg to toml or whatever.
Right.
So
cool. Yeah, this is great. More progress on the pyproject.toml stuff.
Definitely.
Very cool. Now, before we move on, let me tell you all about our sponsor this week, Datadog. They've been supporting the show for a really, really long time. Datadog is great. They have a real-time monitoring platform that unifies metrics, traces, and logs into one integrated system. Their APM empowers developers and teams to identify anomalies and resolve issues and improve application performance. So you can begin collecting stack traces and visualizing them as flame graphs and organizing them into profile types such as CPU or IO types of reports. Teams can search for specific profiles and correlate them into distributed traces and identify slow or underperforming code for later analysis and optimization. And with Datadog's APM Live Search, you can perform searches across the full stream of ingest traces of your app over the last 15 minutes. Like, I need to figure out what the database is doing and the API and the front end and all those things. So try them for free with a 14-day free trial, and Datadog will send you a free t-shirt. So just check them out and support the show by visiting pythonbytes.fm/Datadog, or just click the link in your podcast player show notes to get started.
Nice.
Indeed. All right. Brian,
well,
what do you got next?
I've got Git. So this isn't necessarily Python only related, but I use Git a lot, and I didn't know you could do autocorrect with Git. So this is Wayland Walker. He's I think he's been submitted other things to us on the show. Mm-hmm. But he wrote this article called "Configure Git to Autocorrect Your Fat Fingers," or just your sloppy typing. So there's this, like, let's say you do git checkout dev, but you spell checkout CHEKOUT and misspell it. Well, Git will tell you that you did it wrong, and it guesses what you meant and tells you, says a similar command is this. But there's a configuration option that I didn't know about called help.autocorrect that you can set a timeout, and it just automatically runs the command it thinks you wanted. So I'm playing with it, and so far it hasn't got anything wrong. So you can, I've set it to 1 second also, but you can set it to things like 10 seconds, or I don't know why.
Did you mean RM-RF? Applying.
That's just Git commands. It's not everything.
Formatting hard drive.
Git reset -- hard.
Oh, yeah, that one actually would be kind of destructive.
That would be bad.
But I realized that I added this to my workflow, but I realized that I hadn't really talked about my workflow at all on my blog. So I went ahead and just showed the things that I do normally. For a quick change, I usually check out main, do a pull, then create a branch with checkout -b, and then I usually do commit-a-am with a message. I want to talk about that one a little bit, the -a, and then also push, because I want that to be faster. So the -a, what that does is that push. Anyway, I got these backwards. Anyway, the -a will just say, instead of having to stage a file or add them. So normally you have to add your changes and then you commit them. But I usually just want to commit everything that I've changed, or delete it also. If I delete something, I want that to change. So the -a does that. I just learned about that recently. So
interesting. So you can basically skip the get add dot,
yeah,
or something equivalent to that, or the get add file names.
Right. And the add dot is a little dangerous because it'll add everything, unstaged stuff too. So if you have temporary files or just play, you get a test file or a goofy file that you're just playing out with, I don't want to add that stuff. I intentionally add things that I want, or add, what's the other one? Uncommitted things. I don't usually want to add that. So the -a is nice that it doesn't do that. And then the last thing that I did was the global. There's another configuration change of global push.default current. So weird, but what this does is that the current, there's a bunch of values for that. I'm going to have a link to the other show notes and the other the documentation about all the different values in the show notes. But I like current because what that says is the branch name I'm using now, just make that the one online. So if you do,
that's
or
fantastic.
upstream, if you don't do that, it says, oh, there's no upstream named this branch, and you have to do this. I'm like, okay. And you can do it with push. You can do a -u in push to make it automatically do that, but it's just verbose, and I always want it to do that. So anyway, that's my new Git workflow for simple stuff.
I love it. It's very nice.
So
yeah, I really like that current. Having to do that all that extra typing, even with autocomplete, is just annoying.
Yeah. So
yeah.
Brian S., it sounds like you use Git a lot. What's your view of source control from a chemical engineer perspective? Like in that ecosystem and that environment, how do people view this kind of stuff?
They don't. Basically, anyone who's familiar with the much development probably uses it some. Actually, there's a 3D physics multi-physics modeling tool, COMSOL, that just added a source control like feature into it. So it's starting, the data reproducibility and the history tracking is starting to become more of a thing. But yeah, it's very often the V2, V3, 2020
V3 final.
Yeah. So and I have I have blog posts churning about strategies for version control on data analysis code, because of the reproducibility and needing to track environments precisely for reproducibility at a point in the past, and tagging commits for just like, this basically every time I run the code, I need to know what the state of it was, and the tooling is not that great for doing that. At least I haven't found much. So
yeah,
it's still evolving, I think.
Indeed. Okay, cool. Alvaro points out at work they have a project with 6,000 lines in an INI final. That INI to TOML might be just what they need. That sounds like a lot.
You definitely have to you have to proof them afterwards, because there may be some stuff that doesn't translate cleanly. But
yeah, we need a TOML to INI, and you can round trip it and it's the same, then you're good to go.
Yeah. Don't know if that'll work.
Keep your sanity. Huh? All right. This next one's a quick one for me, but it'll be useful for people who are working with JSON Web Tokens. So JSON Web Tokens are a thing that you can exchange with maybe a distributed login system. So instead of using like an API key that you just pass around all the time, you could say, I'm going to either share a certificate or somehow log into some other system, and I'll get back this token that I can share on to other places to communicate who I am, communicate what roles or permissions I should be granted, and so on. So if you work in that world, you work in a world of dealing with cryptographic signatures and picky algorithms and stuff like that. So I just wanted to give a shout out to jwt.io. So this is a place that allows you to decode, verify, and debug JWTs, which is pretty cool. So you come down here, and what you do is you put in some encoded token, and you say which algorithm of the encryption algorithms are using. And then what pops out is the separated JSON result that says, here's the header. It says what algorithm and what type it is, what version of JWT, and so on. And then what the actual data was. Like, this person is a subscriber. Their name is John Doe. Shouldn't scroll it because it doesn't seem to work. And then here's like the signature and whether or not the signature was verified and stuff like that. So I think that's pretty cool. You can hit share JWT and it'll just copy that. You can send it along. But anyway, I think if you're working with the stuff, this might be pretty handy. And while you're at it, there's somewhere in here, the libraries. You can say, see the JWT libraries. And let me make that smaller-ish. So the way it shows, it's a little bit weird. It has the technology and then a whole bunch of checklists. And then if you go down to the bottom, you can see the actual package name. So like there's a bunch of .NET ones here. Don't care about those. But the Python ones are down here and says who's created them, right? Like Simo Source or Michael Davis. And then this one's called Python Jose, JW Crypto, or PyJW, and it shows you which algorithms are supported and how it works and so on. So I think this is pretty cool if you're got to work with these things. What do y'all think?
I don't have a lot of expertise with authentication and tokens of this sort. How is this different from something like macaroons, where it's more like a advanced cookie? Is this separate from the browser, or?
This is done in several ways. I think so. You can go like to a federated identity provider. So something like Auth0 or Microsoft Azure Active Directory or something like that. So, or you can have your own identity provider from like identity servers, like one of these implementations. And basically it allows you to do single sign-on and federated sign-on across different platforms without just taking and using straight cookies. Okay. So it works both for APIs and for other types of apps. You can do it within an app or within an API. So like if I call an API, if I log in with me and I call an API and I want to communicate onto my identity onto the APIs that API is calling, you know, it's like those kinds of sort of more complicated scenarios. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Anyway, jwt.io, check it out. What do you got, Brian's again?
Okay, for my second item, I appreciate the opportunity, Michael and Brian Ocken, to do a little bit of self-promotion. I have a new project I'm calling Jupyter-tempvars. So one of the really powerful things about, Jupyter notebooks are great. You can do a whole lot with them. They're obviously being used everywhere, data science, scientific analysis. And one of the features of at least the Python kernel of Jupyter is that you have a global namespace that you work in. And this really adds to the power of it in some ways, because everything you do in the notebook flows from one cell to another. You don't have to worry about shuttling things back and forth. But as has come up countless times here and elsewhere, you have namespace contamination problems where you accidentally assign something in one cell and then you gun yourself because either you use something and have a typo and accidentally use something from another cell, or something's lingering on and you have the same variable name in multiple cells, and all of a sudden your analysis behaves funny, or it's not reproducible, or you close down for the day and start back up and the whole worksheet blows up. And so what I've put together is it's a notebook extension for Jupyter. It's based upon another library of mine, tempvars, which I need to freshen a bit. But this is it's a front-end extension for Jupyter. And so what the underlying library does is you import from tempvars, you import the capital tempvars context manager. Then I'll just define a variable here. And then in this cell, I've got as a context manager, tempvars, and I declare to it, all right, anything, this syntax says anything that starts with T_ is going to be treated as a temporary variable. And so when I run this, The first line checks to see if t underscore a is in the namespace, and it's not because it's inside the temporary variables context. Then I assign it, and indeed it assigns. And then when I pop out the back end, the previous value, 5, is now restored to it. So what this does is it makes sure that you don't have contamination coming into the cell, and anything you do in here is reverted to the prior state out the back end.
Oh, that's
and so
cool.
that's using the underlying library. But what I did, it's like, okay, fine, it works, but you have to have this whole thing that you type out, and it's cumbersome. So what the Jupyter plugin, the Jupyter extension does is it lets you, you can turn on this toolbar for tags for each cell. And then if you define, go away. Then if you define a tag with this syntax, you can also do a tempvars end, but here tempvars start t underscore. Now this variable will automatically be treated as a temporary variable. It's no longer in the namespace when you execute the cell. And what it's doing behind the scenes is it's actually taking the code, patching the execute functionality for the cell, and wrapping it in a tempvars context manager behind the scenes, so that anything you use in here, t underscore, is a temporary variable. You don't have to worry about it getting contamination from the rest of the namespace. And then just like the other,
so there,
yeah. So it's brand new. 0.1 is out on PyPI. The README is, in order to satisfy the audience here, I have animated GIFs galore.
Screenshots on a UI tool. I love it.
Yeah, and animated to boot. So README has the user's instructions. It's on PyPI, just a pip install jupyter-tempvars, and then I have a shortcut script to actually install the extension into your Jupyter environment. I have a number of features that could be added to it, different things that the underlying library could have added to it. But I'd really love it if anybody who is intrigued would try it out, find and report bugs, suggest features that you want. Because, it's a small thing, but it can be a big problem. And if this could be at least a partial or substantial solution for people, that would be awesome. So,
yeah, nice work. This looks great.
Those are good.
Yeah, the problem of having variables shared across those things when you didn't intend them to be so tricky in so many ways. I mean, Jupyter cells are like go-to statements with no traceability, right? Because it's you could run them down, then you could go back and run the one in the middle again, and then you could go run another. Like, and you have, except for just a little in and out numbering, like you have no idea the order they ran in.
Yeah, notebook hygiene is really tricky, and yeah.
Right, not gonna feel like I cut you off. We can say something.
Oh, just he commented that to satisfy us, he's got, or the entire Python community's got animated GIFs. But to be fair, it's not just technical books and readmes. I don't use cookbooks that don't have pictures either. So
yeah, that sounds good.
I do read novels that don't have pictures, but so it's not everything.
Well, I thought the point there was the pictures in your head. So
I really hate the graphical novels that don't have pictures.
Yeah. Those are the worst.
They're the worst. All right. Real-time follow-up. Brandon Brainer, former co-host here, says this is talking about going back to why JWT over something like cookies. So imagine having something like auto 0 when you log, maybe auth 0 when you log in, it gives you back this JWT, which has a timeout. The front end has this. It can send it to your API. And then also it has the signature that verifies it wasn't tampered with. And you can verify the sender because you can, decrypt it and stuff like that.
Okay. Better chain of custody. Okay.
All that tricky cryptography stuff. Speaking of other things, extra things, you guys got some extras we should cover?
I have a few, actually, some quick ones.
All right, bring it on.
So we've got GitHub issues are finally live. So their Python issues are now on GitHub. So
we didn't jinx it this time.
Really is there. So enough said. I was, I've used Lorem Ipsum before. I think everybody doing front end stuff has, but I didn't know there's a cool page like loremipsum.com that has a translation, so you can read what it means. At least a 1500s 1914 translation. So it's sort of an interesting read. I won't get into it here, but it's worth a read if you're curious. And then one of the things we do sometimes at the end is funny stuff. And one of the things we've covered is various O'Reilly or O'Reilly covers. So I found this dev2 O'Reilly cover generator. I didn't know where it was. Somebody had
nice.
it, and you could just make up your own. So I made one up, passed it around last night. So it's kind of a fun thing.
Yeah, I pulled that from the show notes and passed it on to my friends, and they have run with it. They're delighted.
Awesome. Then I just send test coverage. Unit test with no asserts. At least CI is happy.
So anyway,
this is awesome.
How about you? Got any extras?
I have a few. No, your mention made me add a third one, or another one rather. Let's go here. So, hipster ipsum. If you just need a little more pizzazz in that lorem ipsum, and you don't want people asking questions, this is a hipster ipsum at hipsum.co. This is a generator. You can give it your flavor. So you can go over here and say like, how many paragraphs? We only need 2 paragraphs, and hipster neat, or you can do it with a shot of Latin.
Nice.
And it starts out with, I'm baby, gentrified, tumbler, butcher, cronut, succulents, 4 locos, subway, tile, food truck, letterpress, tote bag, tofu. Anyway.
Doesn't flow quite the same as the Latin, but it works.
Yeah, exactly. You got the fashion X and all that. So anyway, that one's kind of fun. More seriously, quick shout out. Worked with Christos Maskas from the Microsoft Identity team. Speaking of JWTs, and he and I just put together a course, Secure APIs with Fast API in the Microsoft Identity platform. So people can check that out if they want to do JWT and other types of federated identity with Fast API. That's a fun course. We just launched yesterday.
Nice.
Excellent.
Cool.
Yeah, thanks. And then a quick shout out. Seth sent over this thing called Python Virtual Env for Windows, sorta ish. And it's this idea to bring some of the PyEnv virtual environment features to Windows. I haven't really played with this, but trying, I guess some of the features there for the virtual environments don't work on Windows, but his sort of plugin script does. So you can check that out, which I think will be helpful for some people, for the Windows people. And that's it for my items. Brian Skin, do you got anything you want to share as well?
Yep, I've got a few quick ones. First of all, as many probably know, Eva stepped down, Jalaska stepped down as the executive director of the PSF. I believe it was at the end of last year. PSF has found their new executive director, Deb Nicholson. So congratulations to all there. PSF and more generally, the PSF has been hiring lately. Last year there was the packaging project manager, Shamika Mohanan. There's the
developer in residence.
Absolutely. There was a posting for an infrastructure engineer to assist with the facilities. That the link now 404s, so maybe they've made their hire. I don't know, but the posting was there, and now it's not. And then actually in the steering council notes released for March, there is beginnings of discussion about hiring a second developer in residence, which would be terrific. So
yeah, it seems like it's been a big success. So getting someone to help Lukash out would be really great.
Definitely. 2 more quick things. One, PyOhio, the Regional Ohio Conference, the call for proposals is open. It's going to be a fully virtual conference again this year. So anybody who is interested, submit.
Nice.
And then one interesting tidbit relevant to, we have to talk about Pydantic at least once, I think, right? Along with Anthony Shaw and Will McGugan. This was a couple of days ago. Samuel Colvin of Pydantic fame posted this somewhat cryptic tweet here showing over a 10-fold increase in speed for some sort of Pydantic features here. So I don't believe this has actually dropped yet. This is all I know, but this looks pretty exciting.
A magical Pydantic core is coming.
Yes.
Cool. I have no idea what it is, but very exciting.
But I want one.
The Pydantic faster. Maybe it's the Pydantic pony.
The Pydantic unicorn. No, that's great. All right. I got no more extras, but I have some jokes.
Yay.
Bring them.
All right. I think this first one might be from you, Brian Skin. Is that right?
Yeah, I can't.
You want to tell us this joke here?
Yeah, so it's a riff off of the various elements of a business enterprise trying to bring a product to a customer that's what they actually want. With the tree and the swing and the armchair swing and the swing with no ropes and that. This one is more cat directed, and the left panel says product features, and it shows this really nice multi-level cat tower with beds and scratching posts, and very attractive. And on the right it says user needs, and it has a cat peeking up out of a cardboard box.
Exactly. Slightly over designed, would you say?
Just a bit. And I think there was somebody responded to that. There's a tweet lower down saying, "This is exactly my life. I have an untouched cat tree in the corner, and all the cat sits in is the box." So
this is also true for children. A lot of times the box is the best part.
Definitely.
All right, I brought two more for us just because they're all short, and I thought this would be fun. So here's one that says, "Junior developer, how did you find the bug so fast?" And it has the senior developer who is this sort of lion meme. "I was there when it was written."
Lion Witch in the Wardrobe reference there, I think.
And I think so. All right. Yeah. And then this one, I really appreciate this one. So there's two sort of time-lapsed Google search pages with text overlaid on it. And it says 831 C++, hello world. 833 alternatives to C++. And of course, it's complete with the top std : C out less than hello world less than standard out : end out. The formal C++ style of like as print out or print out whatever. Yeah. Hello C++, hello world. Alternatives to C++. I'll just leave it with that, you guys.
I had one semester C++ in college, and I don't miss the compiler errors at all.
No. Yeah, C++ is some wild stuff. Brian, you started working at somewhat. I did a couple years of professional C++, and it was okay, but a lot of craziness.
Yeah, you don't have to use the crazy parts though. So that at least in the embedded world, we use it's C++, but we just selectively use the cool features. Mostly, it looks like C.
Yeah, so. I think C++ is getting a big update as well, isn't it? I think there's
regular updates. There's so many new things coming on. It was fairly stagnant for like decades, and then but in the last 10 years, there's been a lot of new changes.
I feel like I've read people griping that they're making C++ too much like Python or something. Adding, I don't know exactly what that means, but
we propose taking away the semicolons. What?
Too much. Too much.
I can definitely get rid of the curly brackets.
Yeah. There's a lot of parentheses when you don't really need them.
So, yeah.
All right. Well, Brian Ocken, thank you as always, and Brian Skin, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
You bet. Bye, everyone.